sucks out guys, because we've been flooded in the last 4 weeks. We've had the water in through the garage twice. I go out there and I do take the leaves off the top best I can. At one time, before COVID, etc., it was working well. It's getting done. We didn't have a problem. The system works really well if it's cleansed. It's just not getting done. So I'm really asking who was responsible for the top, who was responsible for the bottom.
On those bases, that's the council
Highways.
Yeah.
Right. So that's who we contact.
Indeed. Yes, absolutely. I mean, they did do some. I noticed them doing some other.
Well, we did go and see Gareth Beer.
Yeah.
And he informed us someone was coming up to look at the drains in Emerald Green.
Yeah.
And he was going to email us on the day at the time he was coming. But we received no email. He fell waited in the on the bench in Emerald Green for him to come down the hill, which he didn't. But when we asked him about it, he thought it was from Crossroads in Emerald Green down Churchill, where apparently someone else has got flooded. Our problem is literally down Tout Hill, because all the drains, as you probably know, are in that common gully. They don't get cleaned very well at all. The one right opposite the green, I mean, the whole system's really old. The one opposite the green is literally solid. And nothing's going down. Consequently, it comes all the way down through there with the lowest point before it goes over the hill. It comes straight into our property.
Yeah.
They compacted by the gullies at the top of the hill, also being blocked.
Exactly.
So the water just runs straight off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the other thing is I would suggest that Western Water probably responsible for the actual drains, as opposed to the county responsible for cleaning up the gullies and
Right.
connections.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Probably you would share.
Yes.
Because what they do, if the water doesn't go down the drain, doesn't overload the sewage.
Right.
Another problem.
Yeah.
If you suddenly get surcharge of stormwater,
Mm.
you get sewage running out of the river. So they should have the ability to divert it, or they may need to look at how they can build a sort of flood channel.
Indeed, but I think the main problem is them.
They're not doing that's the whole problem. Yeah.
Because I've had complaints, you know, in Homefield, exactly the same thing, and they're not on a hill particularly bad
Yeah.
the way you are.
Yeah.
So
It happens at the bottom of the hill, it's conservation. The manhole pops off, then the sewage all runs down the
Yes.
street.
Yeah. That sort of links in, going on a little bit of a tangent, with planning application ATS. When we came last time, you talked about that and the excessive rainwater, etc. There's only one place for it to go, it's down to us again.
Yeah.
So, is that something that you would pursue for us, or do we have to have the details?
right.
In the first instance, we use the internet.
Occasionally, I'm not very good on it.
Right. If you go onto the Dorset website, there is a facility. Now, we will start there. My attitude when I have problems is to say, if you don't fix this and fix it, I will be suing you for the damage to my property. And they came and fixed my problem very quickly.
Right.
So I would advise you, first of all, to be very specific about which ones, where they are. And if there's half a dozen up the road, find out and report them all.
You just click on the map, then they have a map, each gully is marked.
Right.
So you just click on the house.
I don't know whether they understand problems. I don't think
It's time to say, I reported some of the issues, and within a week, I think they were out. It didn't work, it right out into the drain, so it's not coming.
Yeah, that's the
It didn't
problem.
actually come.
Right, yeah, that's the frustrating thing, is getting somebody to come out and physically look. I mean, we had this problem, we had it all through the house 20 years ago, not more, and somebody did come out then and they did some remedial works in the drains, which, as I say, effectively it's fine. That's not
they did publicly say, I don't know, a year or two ago, they were going to stop routinely and respond to reports of being blocked.
Oh, right.
So I would go through that channel first. can make a short statement in the box that when you report it, and if you say that they've been warned, if it happens again, you'll sue them. And it does make them read the email,
Right.
which is a start.
Yes.
And then if they come and only do the surface job, then you'll know next time that it's no better. Then you report it again, the same threat. So now can you rub the complete drain through and keep on? We don't have any more powers than you do.
Right, okay.
So,
But we will, but we will also write to them and we will contact highways so that there's a kind of pincer movement.
yeah.
Okay. And Karen, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I've got a statement to read out. So I've been sent this statement.
Is this in relation to drains? It's not. Okay, so hang on 2 seconds then. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Right,
Thank you very
okay, super. And
Yes, I'm Cheryl first. I was just coming back to find out if my petition was sent anywhere at all about Shooter's Lane and the state it's in.
It hasn't been. Sorry, Miss Silver, no, it hasn't, and that's my fault. It's with me. But I will get that action this week.
Yes,
I took leave directly after the last meeting when you gave it to me, so it's still in my pile after I came up from late.
because just so if you're in a disabled buggy as well in Daniels and you want to power that up the hill, everywhere is steps, so that is also a path that we probably would be able to come up without coming up and make those sensible. Pavement, shall I say.
Yeah.
So I am still concerned. There are still a lot of people concerned about that path. And I would like to answer asked.
yeah, okay. Sorry.
Yes, okay, so this statement is from a
I've got a question in this, going moving on to other things.
Oh, right, okay. Sorry, Richard, you've got a question in relation to that. Okay.
I called by because I'm disappointed to see Tim Cook here this evening. He seems apologies or something. I thought he was on the planning commission.
No, it's a conflict of interest.
Okay,
It's on the-
well, in that case, I may have to address it to the proctor, but does anyone on the council have an update as to what the county have decided or about to decide on the beech trees outside the little
Glad we have.
yeah?
So we are still in the process of arranging the next site meeting. They trying to coordinate diaries amongst everything has been rather difficult over the end of August. We've got a few dates for the last part of this week and the start of next week, which will, so by the end of next week, we will have that site meeting. And then we'll be able to update further.
Before Phil comes in, do I understand that, if I can call it, Shaftesbury's tree consultant as opposed to the county tree consultant, reckons that they can be saved by putting guy ropes there, and that Lidl's is amenable to this suggestion. So therefore, that is a realistic possible outcome. You're still confirming that?
Let's do.
Sorry.
Yes, no, it's not a quick session, is it?
Yeah, just to report on the meeting. Nick Ellis, tree expert that I brought in,
Yes.
who's had 2 meetings, not charged with those 2 as a goodwill gesture. But I have said to him at some point he's going to be giving us a bill for, you can't go on having free price. He has looked at trees and Paul, as is Bernard, Bernard was there as well. Bernard's had 40 years in landscape architect, I've had 40 years in architect, and Nick Ellis has had 30 years plus as a tree consultant. Nobody has seen such appalling mutilation of the roots of trees. It's completely unnecessary. So the roadside, the extra cutting in to the grass bank was basically done on the instruction of Dorset Highways, who hadn't bothered to report to their tree officer. So that was completely unnecessary to put in a cycle lane that doesn't go anywhere because it goes from the width of the frontage.
Yes.
So I'm correct, their tree officer didn't even know that.
No, correct. So we thought that was bad enough.
Then on the
And then
river
at the last meeting, we looked at the Lidl's site manager escorted us in so that we could look at the other side. Again, completely pointless exercise. Littles have dropped the level of the ground by about a metre. Now, they said they've got the trolley running back into the trolley park, but it's 100 yards wide. There's no need to have had a drop the levels at all, but they dropped it that far from the trunk of the tree. So it's just sliced through all the trees.
Did they have permission for that?
Well, they would. I don't know. This is what we just know. But it's completely crass decision to bother dropping the levels like this. It was a car park. So I guess from the Dorset officers' point of view, they saw car park basically remaining. I think car park, it was partly the building park in front of stuff. They would have expected the granddaughters to remain, not drop to me. No reason. So what Nick Ellis and I put forward is that yes, the roots have been sliced back in front, but if you were to buy new semi-mature trees, they would come with root balls, probably smaller than the trees have already got. And you would put them in and you would put in watering and guides ropes to stabilise them. So what we're saying is that if the trees are monitored very carefully to see that they whether they are in distress, and the guide ropes applied to those trees for public safety to stabilise them, that it is very convinced that they can be retained. Certainly that's what we should be aiming to do first instance. Our next concern is the other side of the road, because they've got to, what's shown in the drawings is that the curb on the laundry side is going back 3 metres or so to allow for the right-hand turning. But that, if you look at it, is under the canopy of the trees and is therefore straight through all the roots. So that's not an acceptable solution. And therefore, we need to get the message through to Dorset's trees and highways that slicing through all those roots is not an option. And whatever they do, they've got to find another solution to getting into the store site. That's as I see it, that's why the meeting now being set up with Dorset's officers. The team's meant to be arranging this 3 weeks.
And who from our side, as it were, is going to be in attendance other than Tim Cook at that meeting?
Well, I would like to be, like, obviously,
yeah, no,
Nick
you
has
organise
my
it,
best
that's
ideas around, which hopefully will be working. Bernard, I would like to see there because he's representing the tree group, of course, the interest of the trees.
Yes,
Because as far as the Dorset officers are concerned, they just wipe their hands of it and say, oh, they're unsafe, they'll have to come down.
yeah, yeah.
Well, that, for
The
us,
easiest
we've got
option.
passion.
Yeah.
Now, we're not 40 miles from the trees. And I think that makes the big difference.
My impression is also that none of the Dorset tree officers have been told or knew that was a commemorative act, which is pretty significant. And that should have been part of their consideration.
It's also the fact that the trees were planted by Shaftesbury, but by dint of the fact that they're in the bush, they belong to Dorset Council. So their trees have been damaged. They're the ones that should be jumping up and down saying to Little, you damaged our trees.
So is it this council or this committee position that they will now fight to keep those trees if the experts think it's at all feasible and the Little says yes, okay, we'll try, we'll pay for it. That's basically
The issue has to come through. So that's not a problem. If we haven't had a meeting on the agenda, but I would hope that this council can appoint Nick Ellis on our behalf to direct the operations that happen to those trees. So we basically also can say that the instructions have been given by an insured tree consultant, and they're acting on our instructions. And hopefully that's the way that we.
Okay.
So
So
Claire needs to have instruction, because that has to come from the agenda. Right?
yeah, I'm just very conscious. We only have 20 minutes. Poor Karen has been interrupted twice already and needs to say whatever she's going to say. So I don't know that we have a motion actually covering our position on the trees, whether we need to have one.
We don't have one, but if I can come to that when we get to item 4, I've got a way of reading. Like,
Okay.
My final comment would be, I hope that this committee would lead this council into fighting for those children.
Yes, absolutely.
If they can be saved, which it sounds like they can.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Right. Does anyone from the public gallery have got anything more to say at this point? Good. Karen, we have a third time lucky.
Right, so my statement is from a lady, a local lady who's disabled. So she's against the pedestrianisation of the high street, and this is her statement. She said, during the time of pedestrianisation, I was only able to access the high street twice, as most times when I went there, the disabled parking spaces were full, so I had to give up. I normally used to go there twice a week for shopping, but most social events such as lunch, etc., I am no longer able to do. If it's pedestrianised again, then I will no longer be able to take my many guests to Gold Hill as I always did, as could access by parking near the town hall and using a wheeler to get there. I cannot go far on my wheeler as it causes me great pain in distances. I am very depressed that I have now lost the town I so love. And her name is Delana Scott Owen. And I've given a copy of this to, yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you, Karen. Okay, that concludes the public participation. Do we have any apologies, Claire?
I have apologies from Councillor Hollins, said he had a family commitment.
Okay. Do we have any declarations of interest from anybody in relation to any of the planning applications in front of us? Take that as a no. So I declare an interest in that. I know that the applicants for the first planning application on our list, which is Manor Close. So for that application, I'm going to hand over to John. I'm sorry?
I know it was done.
Isn't it?
You have to have some financial personal interest.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And yes, it's got to what's called written on the application, but what time, 3 years. I might not say a lot because I just want to make sure it looks right. But,
Okay.
You don't.
Oh, fine. Okay. I mean, I'm just being extra careful. Well, yeah, no, there is that. Yes. Super. Okay, right. Good. So, minutes to be adopted. Has everybody read the minutes from the 17th of August? Excellent. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Karen. So, all in favour? Thank you very much. So, officer reports.
Okay, so Chair, perhaps if I can come to the unwritten item that's in here, when we're talking about the trees. There is an element of delegation that I have as your officer, so we do have a tree management budget for town council trees, and I've also got access to a professional trees budget. I have the ability to spend up to £2,500 on expected expenditure within those budget lines. It's not an agenda item, so we must acknowledge that this isn't coming to you as a vote to do a new piece of expenditure. This is more to do with seeking a professional opinion so that the council knows what direction to take. If this committee, I would say, is unanimous in wanting to seek that professional opinion, I'd be happy to extend my delegation to pay that. Does anybody have an idea of what that cost would be?
I think we're here, we're talking about Nick Ellis, and that would be over to Phil. Do you have any idea what his professional cost might be?
Well, let's say, I'm sure it'll be under 2,000. Give us an indication, I'm sure. He knows what's got to be involved, he's got a reasonable idea, but he should be able to give a budget.
Well, can we agree that Nick Ellis and Claire will discuss and that he will submit a proposed fee for his involvement? Sorry? Indeed, yes, and he must accordingly. Yes?
So for clarity,
Oh, yes.
because I've just had notes that the audio isn't great on Zoom tonight, so we're in a better position because we're facing the microphone. The proposal is I use my delegation up to the 2,500. I go and seek the price from Nick Harris, and if I am shocked or are happy with the quote, I shall come back to you, but otherwise we'll go ahead and get that question written.
Excellent. Good. Vote. Those in favour? Lovely.
Unanimous. Thank you.
Unanimous.
Okay, so the other items in here, I've got further updates since the papers were written. The signage for the Time Traveller app, we have the meeting, I think it's tomorrow afternoon at 3 p.m. So we will be able to give you a further update at the October planning committee meeting. And then I'm still awaiting the response from Broken Road. I will chase again for that one. I'll keep chasing.
Are there any other private highways engineers we might be able to talk to?
I can start doing some
You
digging
might
around.
come
Yeah.
back a bit quicker because this particular person has had quite a long time to come back to you.
Yeah.
Claire, do you need to have a contact with design highways?
I'll catch up with you offline if you've got somebody in mind. Thank you.
So under drainage works, Bimport, so I'm leaving my mic on just to make sure everyone will like it here. So
This is for your information.
shall I read this out?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so Dorset Council's construction team have made contact and requested the best dates for some drainage works to commence at Bimport in Shaftesbury. This is right at the beginning of Bimport on the corner of Peak Street, so a tricky area. These works are required as a property in the area has flooded in recent times due to ineffective drainage. These works will require a 2-week road closure and will require the use of High Street to divert traffic. The middle of October is the earliest date available, as this is due to the TRO, traffic road order, that's it, application process. We have kind of liaised offline about this. It'd be preferable for the works to commence on the 11th of October, therefore completing by the time half-term starts on the 22nd of October, which is the last day of term. There's an opportunity to start a week earlier on the 4th, and that would be more favourable. However, you may not be able to, the TRA may not be able to be organised in time for that date to be considered. The least favourable option would be starting on the 1st of November, but we're trying very much to get these works done before we go into the key Christmas trading period. Recommendation is that the reports are received and noted and any actions arising identified for future meetings of the council or its committees.
Chair, if I could just suggest that on the drainage works, if there are any dates that you are aware of as local people that would be make this difficult to let us know.
Okay, I mean, I have been consulted, and you know, these are the dates I suggested actually. Yes, that's not till sort of mid. Yes, yeah. Yes.
Ask a request.
Yeah.
I understand that Mulberry Abbott are having a meeting later this month, and Planning Hall has invited. It's regarding the potential demolition of houses and for infrastructure, and I think that would be really something on the officer's report.
Okay, to see what was said and
impacted by that whole area.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good point.
So I think the new chair there is David Brother.
Yes. Yes. I've spoken to him before. Yeah.
The meeting by the sounds of it is going to be one of their parish council meetings that would be open to the public, so anybody would be able to attend, but it might be worth this committee either asking if an officer can attend that meeting to report back in formal capacity, or any councillor could also do that if you wanted to nominate someone. Otherwise, there is a risk of everyone assuming somebody else is going to go and do it.
Yes. No. Good point. Is that something you wanted to attend, Karen? Not necessarily.
No. I am
Okay, and do we have any idea when it is? Off the top of our heads.
24th.
24th of September. Oh, thank you, Richard. Thank you. Okay.
I think it would be good if somebody asked for town council attended.
Yeah.
Especially things like.
Yes, absolutely. Is anyone here able to attend? That unfortunately is a date I'm totally unavailable. Right.
It would seem appropriate for the mayor to attend like that. And since he's not here to. I propose the.
Seconded. Right, well, we will make a note to make sure that somebody is there, but thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. Now, the one thing we haven't quite nailed, actually, is that you said that in item number 4, we could get round to discussing. I said, you know, we don't have an official council position on the little trees. And I'm wondering, and you know, Richard has suggested that we should, and that, you know, maybe we should make this a kind of formal thing, that our position is that we want the trees to be retained and we want all efforts to be made in order to retain them. Is that something we should be considering, is my question.
I suggest that we put forward to the Roads Committee and the full council, and then that's going to be over 2 weeks. I think.
Well, Roads Committee's next week, so. Yeah.
2 weeks.
Oh, I see. Right, okay. Because that is more appropriate than here.
It's stronger.
It's stronger than here.
Oh, it's also not on our agenda.
No, that's
It's
fine.
not a resolution, but
Okay.
roads, it can actually go on the agenda.
Fantastic. Can we put that in? Or can we ask the is this?
Yes, I can get that onto the roads agenda. That's not a problem. Just as a point of clarity, the roads committee is delegated to do anything open space and environment related, so it would have the same weighting as a council decision. But I appreciate the image of something going to full council is different, even though in law it has the same status.
Yes.
So if you want a statement immediately, we can get that done by Rose next Tuesday. If it's to be a full council position statement, then it would be out of the 28th September meeting.
Okay.
Would the 28th be better so then we could get this chat to do a report for us?
Is that going to be soon enough, do we think? You know, what if a meeting, I'm kind of wondering if there are meetings happening, if we should just.
That was it. I'm going to raise, and I suggest at the very least we need to get it in front of roads so that the council has an agreement as soon as possible.
And then report again.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Okay, so this committee recommends to the roads committee to consider a position which will then be recommended on to full council for formalisation.
Yes. Cracking. Okay, planning applications. So application number 1, location Manor Close, James Street, install access gate and annex.
I propose no objection.
Yes. Fantastic. We'll vote on that. Everyone accept? Lovely. Super. Tick.
So before the motion for the second item, can you explain to me how the water is getting into? I've looked all of the way through the garden studio, and I can see that it's an extension putting in shower, toilet, and a sink, and there was septic tank, but I couldn't see how the water was getting in, so I was very confused.
Yes, no.
Can someone help me with that?
I don't think so, because I couldn't see it either, and I was wondering much the same thing. So there's nothing in the application about, you know, water access, which presumably is going to have to come from the main house because it doesn't show that there is any water there, as you pointed out. I mean,
Drains, as I used to live there.
yes.
Just west of the 2 roads. Drains come along to the 2 roads and then run straight down their garden and then run down the field. So actually, they could have made sewer within 5 years.
But it's not the main sewer we're talking about, Phil. We're talking about the fact that there is no water, fresh water going to the shed currently, is there?
You could have piped and tried.
Oh, fine, okay, so that doesn't need to be mentioned in the planning application.
Doesn't say. So all they're doing is saying how it's going out and not how it's going out. Because they're actually putting in an extension.
Yeah. But with the shower and toilet and everything. Yeah.
So I just wanted to propose that I have concerns on this because I was just wondering whether this fact that it was already, my understanding was that it was already constructed to be an office. And to put a shower, toilet and a sink in there makes it multifunctional, and I'm quite concerned about it actually being a Airbnb and rented out. So I'm just wondering whether we can actually, or I'd like to propose a conditional, the condition of that it's not used for a Airbnb, and that the conservation officer report, the conservation officer signed off. I couldn't see anywhere that the conservation officer signed off. The reason why I'm saying those two things is that about 5 years ago, when this shed was initially built, there was an uproar because it was the wrong roof or something, and people could actually see it from Castle Hill. And so I've already had a question, would the roof be, as they're extending it? I know that they say in the report that we can't see it, but we'd get into a lot of trouble.
Okay. I think I'm going to stop you there, Karen, because in all honesty, firstly, I think Park Walk was the view head. So yes, it could be seen from Park Walk. But quite frankly, what looks like an MOD installation at the end of Ratcliffe Gardens is so huge, so large, and so visible from Park Walk that I think it's highly unlikely that planning and highways, that the planning department is going to turn this down based on that. Yeah, no, I totally agree. But then the conservation officer would have had, comment on the other one.
But they did last time, and they had to pull it down, and then they had to do a new one. It was,
yeah.
It
no,
was,
I remember it because obviously I live quite close to there. I do remember it. Okay, so thank you. I've got your views on that. Alex, what are your views?
My personal views is that I have no objection to carry on. However, I believe Karen did make a proposal. Otherwise, I have no.
Okay, so I always find this rather awkward because I prefer to discuss things first and propose afterwards. So I want to know what people think. And so if this doesn't come naturally to me, so am I supposed to look for a seconder for your proposal?
Move on to the debate, and then motion falls, then you can move to the next proposal. If I could, so I have a moment on the subject of the use of the building, provided it doesn't change the class, there it's not a material planning use that we're objecting or supporting. However, that is the beauty of being town parish council. We don't have to be constrained by planning, material planning considerations. We can put that in as an observation, just to let you know that it probably won't have a great deal of weighting. But it's fair enough at this level to share that viewpoint. That's what as a community we need to do.
Well, what is the precise wording of your proposal?
Well, I propose that it's a conditional no objection.
Yes.
And the condition is based on that it's not going to be used as an Airbnb, and that the conservation officer is happy with the sort of shed, isn't it? It's a garden studio.
Yeah.
It's called a garden studio.
Yeah. So,
Those two things, so it's conditional.
Yeah.
No objection. Based
Okay.
on those two.
okay, do we have a seconder for that? Yeah. Okay, so, Phil, do you have views on this?
To be honest, it's out there tomorrow morning. Notice it. So I really can't see.
Okay, John?
I concur with Karen. I would be concerned if I thought it was going to be used for a family person to live there, because it would generate more traffic in an area that doesn't also. So I think it's a perfectly reasonable condition to apply. I mean, if it were up to me, I would probably say I would oppose it unless, rather than allow it if it comes to the same thing. As far as the connection to the sewer is concerned, I suspect that that's not an issue. I don't think it would affect the desirability or otherwise of having it there. There is the people who own the field adjacent to that garden, behind the two grills, where they used to keep llamas, are starting to rent out shepherd's huts for holidays Airbnb.
Yes, that's
And
right. Yeah.
I have a feeling they are doing it illegally. No permission has been sought by us. So I think that we ought to be reporting that to the planning department that this is going on illegally. They tapped into a sewer apparently because they plumbed in a toilet.
Yes, I noticed, and they moved it, yeah.
And there obviously is a sewer down the dip. One that Phil mentioned. So the whole question of filling the area up with Airbnbs is something that we need to be on the lookout for. And so if it's clearly a condition of our approval, then I think we ought to go on. We could at the point append to this motion the fact that something similar is going on in the adjacent field, and could the enforcement officer look at it, because I'm uncomfortable.
Okay,
Well,
I think
it's
actually
a separate issue.
Yeah, it's a
It's
separate issue. So,
It is an issue.
okay, so shall we vote on Karen's proposal? All those in favour? Great.
You have 1, 2, 5 in favour. 4 in favour.
One abstention.
One abstention. Okay.
I just say, Virginia,
Yes.
I would have been okay if it was a sink and a toilet, but the fact that it's a shower
Yeah.
means that they've actually moved it into being it's actually defined as a living space, a self-contained living space, and this is what is going on quite a bit at the moment, where they start renting them out for these.
No, absolutely. It's a good point. That's something I crossed my mind as well. So noted. Okay, so moving on to two planning application numbers there. Proposal: change of use and conversion of restaurant to form a takeaway. Internal and external alterations to facilitate change of use from restaurant to takeaway for L Street. So, Alex. I'm sorry? Yes, could we go on to the, and in fact, these are up there twice, just so you know. So next, you go to the next lot.
Yeah. I'm somewhat torn on this one.
Yeah.
Because at the moment, China Cottage is much easier to walk to from my house. However, when it moves,
Yes.
roads, they're much easier to get to from the art centre. So that being the case, as we looked at the plans,
It's a win-win situation for
I
you, Alex.
honestly don't see there's any reason to have go as far as to support this, because it provides a better facility for a business that has been in Shaftesbury for many years now.
Okay. Phil?
You will remember that we had Yuck Wire just across the road.
I do.
For well over 30 years. And so having a takeaway application, type of takeaway, that'll be an issue. And therefore, I can have it.
Okay. John?
I'm very happy as well.
I just have two things that I want to ask your opinion on then. The problem that we have outside the kebab shop with cars parking up, that is one thought, that cars will be parking up in what is a very tight area. But the advertising sign, as long as it's not glossy, I mean, I have no issue with the appearance, with the design or anything like that. But in the neighbourhood plan in the town centre section, we are very keen on traditional signs, preferably those that are painted and not shiny, tacky looking plastic ones. So
I'm happy to modify my proposal that support on the condition that the signage is in painted.
okay, good. And can we just dig out? We'll just dig out the.
We can get the policy
Yeah.
afterwards.
So I think it's in the town centre section. Yeah. Thank you. Super. Okay. So we have a proposer, a seconder. All those in favour? Fantastic. Yes. No, I think it's a great use of that and marvellous.
Sarah, but I'd just like to have a query on this one because I was.
Which one?
The next, the area. When I was driving around the corner, I happened to really like Trinity, the view and everything. And I couldn't find the conservation officer's report. And to me, having the radio aerial sticking out of something that's quite iconic in Shaftesbury, I just couldn't help thinking, is there really nowhere else to put the radio aerial?
So
we.
Okay, so firstly, we are talking about planning application submitted by, this is Alfred, it's a radio antenna to the top of the tower at the Trinity Centre in Bedford. So there is quite a bit of background to that actually. There's some additional information that I know Claire has sent to you, for the benefit of those in the public gallery and to those online. This is some more information that this is Alfred have sent to us. Although the drawings of the area are sufficient because they are to scale, the actual dimensions have not been updated on the form. You'll notice on it just says XX, YY and doesn't actually give the dimensions. So the area is 2.1 meters high and 33 millimeters diameter. It looks like a raspberry cane. It will be flush against the pinnacle nearest the town centre side of the tower. Will have a fiberglass casing painted the colour of the green sandstone. It won't be shiny or metallic in appearance. The photographs we have submitted with the application were taken after we made a scale model and photographed it in situ at various points around the town, so we were confident that it was not visually intrusive. Of significant importance is the planning application lodged by the BBC in 1999 for the same sort of aerial, albeit one a few centimetres taller, in the same position. We have asked Dorset Council to make that available in the planning application history of this site. They have not. It must be coded incorrectly, so it can't be linked automatically. Here is the link to that planning approval, so we have a link available should anyone wish to see it. The significant point is that the conservation officer and the planning officer felt that this 1999 aerial would not be harmful. Ours is a carbon copy, albeit slightly smaller. We refer in our application to a previous aerial, one that existed before the BBC consent. There has been a history of aerials on the tower, not all as discreet as ours. The BBC never took up their planning approval and didn't place an aerial. There are two applications bundled together with ours. Some people have offered support on the listed building consent application. Indeed, they have. In fact, there are 28 submissions in support of this application, rather than the full planning application, the Wondercat. So they have given various links so that people can have access to that information. Just in case you need additional information, Alfred is a company limited by guarantee. We are not for profit, have no paid staff, and never will have paid staff. We are operated entirely by volunteers. Around 80 local people regularly volunteer making programmes, features and articles. We will be regulated by Ofcom for FM broadcasts, which would result from the radio aerial. Online podcasts are unregulated. So that is the additional information that they have submitted. And what was it you couldn't find?
Well, I couldn't find the conservation officer's report because it is an iconic building within Shaftesbury.
Yes, but possibly they just haven't submitted it yet.
Right. And my question was, is there really nowhere else to put radio area?
Well, no, apparently not, because, and let me read this to you. So this is, so let me see. Is this what it says? Yeah, the use of the Trinity Tower. So this is in the design and heritage section of the planning application. Just on a small note, can I really encourage all members of the planning and highways, members of the public, anyone listening online, if you are engaging with the planning application, I can't urge you enough to look at the design and access and heritage statement, because that's where the juice is. That's where people lay out their stall, and there's information in there you won't find anywhere else. So it says, the use of the Trinity Tower as a transmission base will help us extend our online radio programme to the widest number of local residents. Height is the most important factor in radio transmission. As a community radio station, we will be given the extremely low power levels of just 25 watts by Ofcom. For comparison, BBC Radio Solent transmits their 96.1 FM service using 5,000 watts of power from Roadworks. Aerial height will partially compensate for such low power levels, and it was clear that the Trinity Tower provided the optimum transition site due to the elevation.
So the thing is,
Yeah.
these reports, the reason why I like to see the statutory constantly or the conservation officer is the report that you've just accessed is the person who's biased. So some of those reports you actually can't go by at all.
So what do you mean by access?
Well, it's obviously written by, well, I could see it's written by Simon Rutter. So, and he's being paid obviously by Mrs. Alfred. So you can't read that report and say, oh, well, yeah, that's going to be. I'm not.
So there are facts. But there are facts in here.
But I don't. You can read. I've read so many of those, and so many of those are actually twisted. So you have to be. You have to be very, very, very cautious. And so that is why it's when you're actually changing anything to do with an iconic building, you really have to see what the conservation officer says. So you can say conditional on the conservation officer, but I just think that any change to an iconic building, people get upset, even though people think it's a little stick coming out of the tower, they do get upset.
Okay. Okay, your comments noted.
Yeah.
Thank you. Alex and Phil and John, everyone wants to say something. Alex.
Thank you. I can see from the various photos available application that's and on the access report, there's a history of learning areas on the field. And I don't honestly see it as a problem. If anything, it's slightly less intrusive than any of the others. So I would propose for this application for a plan of public space.
Okay. Do I have a second of that? John. Okay. Phil, did you want to have anything to say?
John, can I if you turn yours off, because it'll only allow 2 or 3 on at once.
Okay. Try again, Phil. Yes.
Well, yeah, you may be aware that to my knowledge, there were police areas on the tower, and nobody batted an eyelid about those. There were a couple of chimney pots that disappeared, and nobody batted an eyelid about those. It ought to have lightning conductors probably on the top of it, which sticking up out of the top. To be honest, this is minor. Chances are that in 10 years' time to the old technology and absolutely, I suppose you could say that that is a potential point that when it's no longer needed. That would be my suggestion.
Okay. Do you want to amend Alex's proposal?
Well, with your-
I don't see the need for it myself, so I think it sounds nice.
Okay, so we have a proposal, we have a seconder, can we all vote? Those in favour? Against?
I'm wary, so.
Okay,
Can I just confirm between you, Lord Chair, the conservation officer comments are due by the 10th of September?
Pretty soon, yeah.
Okay. Next, erect side and rear single-storey extension at number 2 Pound Lane. That is the, oh, there we are, site plan up there. So, has anyone been to have a look at this? Anyone been along Pound Lane to have a little look? It's the one, yeah, it's the one I didn't get to this one. It's not number 2, so
It's where it meets mounted by the bus gate. The horizontal one is mounted.
Oh, I see that way round.
yeah.
What is that?
Oh, there we are. Okay, yeah. Super. I think just looking at that, I mean, you know, it's a small house and quite a large plot.
I was a bit thoughtful. It's much larger, but can't finish. Because it's not going to overlook everybody. It's trebling almost the size of the footprint,
Oh,
but it's
are you sure?
more than doubling it.
Well, let's look at the, oh yes, I see what you mean.
The height is what it is now, and the shaded is what it will be. It's only a story high, but it's taking, it's a big plot, I can't do that. And other people in adjacent houses couldn't do the same.
Yes, so top left-hand corner, that's what it currently looks like. Yeah, so that's existing, and then top left-hand corner, that is proposed. So that's what you would see from the front. Alex?
No, I don't know.
There was no objection, there's nothing wrong.
Yeah. You'll have a seconder? Karen? Brilliant. Everyone okay? Shall we vote? All those in favour? Unanimous. Okay. Next, last. Erect front and side extension to existing garage at Onkaparinga, Yateman's Lane. I did go and have a quick look at this actually just before I came to the meeting. So it can't be seen from, well, it can sort of, I mean, there's a lot of very high hedges along there. You can't see it from Yateman's Lane. If you go into the drive, I doubt that the people on the other side of the drive, because if you come off Yateman's Lane and turn right into the house, that little strip in between, so you go to the other, thank you. So here, this is, hang on, can you just, yeah, just go left a bit. Oh, thank you very much. Right, sorry. That's idiosyncratic English there. So you come off Leighton's. So this is the drive to the house. This here is a huge hedge. So I don't really see these people here are going to see it. There are trees and hedgery along here. There is a sign, they have posted a sign just here, so the neighbours can find out about it. And the people here, there's actually quite a distance between them and there's trees here. Can't see that it's going to be a problem. If we scroll down to
Because the next.
Yeah,
the next
and
picture.
just the next picture, just so people can have a little look. That's existing.
As I can tell from the elevation, it might look slightly better.
Yes, yes, to have a kind of unified pitch roof as opposed to all of that, I can't see a problem really. Yeah, so, yeah, super. All those in favour? Excellent. I think that is that. Is when we don't have anything else to discuss, do you?
On the agenda there is just yeah, that was the last time the application. So that's
Oh, right, okay.
5, so it's just 5 to 6, which for this committee is usually. The only thing that Bree mentioned to me this afternoon that the committee might want to consider for the coming year budget is that the rules for neighbourhood plans have changed and they are now looking to have them refreshed every 2 years. So it would be worth, if you are looking to keep that document alive, given the amount of effort and money that's gone into it in the first instance, I would recommend that to your officer that you put some money aside so that you refresh the neighbourhood plan, and then it's whether there are any other budget items that you want to add in for the 2022 to 2023.
Okay.
You had Karen in.
Okay, Karen.
Right, I just brainstormed a few things, and I looked at what we were talking about last year, and maybe Councillor Lewis can help me out of this one. But there was a lot of people really wanted heritage lanterns along the high street, and that seemed to have gone in and out. But I think that heritage lanterns, footpath cycleways, and LEP funding, and of course, when I do my lap around Shaftesbury, I get stopped quite a lot about Gold Hill. So I think the thing that I'd like to see, I know that it's Dorset Council's responsibility, but I'd like to see a negotiation that goes on with Dorset Council that they pay Shaftesbury Town Council to road sweep Gold Hill. So do sort of like non-invasive, non-technical stuff on the cobbles. So there was a resident sweeping the whole of the street on Sunday and clearing up, you know, around Brenda's. There were people, volunteers putting back on. Is it Brenda? Number 10.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think that those are the 4 things that I thought about in my brainstorm.
Heritage Lanterns was on this committee, it was on the strategic plan. It got demoted at the last review of the strategic plan, but there's no reason why it can't be raised again. But waste cycleways has always fallen at both planning and Rose's door. It's up to the council where it wants to put it, to be perfectly honest, but as a rule of thumb, if they put waste cycleways on the highway, then they can sit with this committee, and if they're a recreational one going across open spaces, they can sit with Rose. And then LEP funding, I would want a little bit more understanding of what the budgetary implications is, what you wanted to achieve from that. And God Hill, I've had conversations with Dorset Council on this topic, actually, as well as on the High Street, in terms of talking about alternatives for, so we don't use the glyphosate, but Dorset Council does, and I've started a conversation about how we can perhaps offer the town council services so that if we sweep the stiff brim, the much weight that we say in Gold Hill, that will reduce the detritus on the high street, and therefore they won't need to do glyphosate when they come through their sprays, because they come along 4 bites, and if there is weeds, they will spray them, they won't. So what I can do is take that Gold Hill suggestion and then put it forward to 2 different proposals. One that's solely Gold Hill, because that is a key area that people have raised, but I can also then do it by extension, be part of the whole high street.
Yeah, so just so I think everyone has seen this, there's lots of chairs missing all of the way down, and as a consequence, very dirty and leaves, etc. And this poor chap was clearing it all out. So I just think that Dorset Highways, I know I can remember that we did a deal with all of the verges and it actually worked very, very well when we did that deal. And I think that they paid the town council £6,000 a year. And I was just wondering, can't we just get money out and get the, do we still have the road sweeper? Could the road sweeper go down there, or was it dangerous?
We don't have the road sweeper anymore. It came to the end of its natural life. At the moment, we are doing it either manually or we use Dorset Council road sweeper, but they come and do it on our behalf, but it's a big piece. So I can explore those options. It might be that it's something that goes into the capital programme, and that's a purchase that's needed.
Yeah, maybe we should get a road sweeper that's over, you know, that's really good with but they're dangerous. I mean, you saw the guy that got pushed to the track. So you want to make sure that so I think a road sweeper, I didn't realise that the road sweeper was on. I had no idea that it was all done manually.
So, Alex.
I was near the other ones. I was going to ask what the prices would be.
For the very original suggestions, like the neighbourhood plan.
Yes.
Yeah. I think we might need to have a think.
We might need to have a think about it. What I can do, if that's something you want me to put the numbers in, because what will happen after today, and I should start with this, I'm sorry. The proposals for next year's budget will get put into the overall budget, and then that will get debated by Jen. So as part of that process, we will start to see whether we are balancing the books or whether we are going to have to make savings elsewhere. So this is the first step. We put the numbers in and then we can see if there's a need to cut. So I'm thinking 5,000, but I have plucked that. And
What, for everything?
No, for the neighbourhood.
Yeah.
And then I'd have to go away and
Yeah, I mean, I would say that my comment on the neighbourhood plan would be that having done the bulk of it, what we need going forward are consultants. Then we need to hone into technical detail and make sure that it absolutely nails as well as it possibly can, as well as we are allowed to. So that's where we need the planning consultant. And if the design statement needs coming up, at highways, anything where we could be more rigorous, but then the whole thing needs to be filtered through the planning consultant so that we know that it would still pass muster.
I would suggest in that case that our best course of action at this point would be to put everything in and then see what Jeremy strips out.
What does everything look like to you, Alex?
Well, everything that Karen mentioned.
Yeah.
Plus the neighbourhood plan. They do all of those things. Plus anything else.
Yeah.
John,
Oh, sorry.
it may be that we look back and think, actually, that would be impossible to support based on, say, a preset price that we need to have, in which case we can look at what needs to be removed. At this point, it's a case of let's cost everything out and plug it all in and see where we are at that point. And then if we find that we can't afford, based on income, that's the point of review.
Okay, Karen.
Yeah, I'm going to try not to see angry with that. I know that's I'm the only person on the committee, and I know he wasn't, it didn't need to be a person, but I think this council structure that is irking me. And I think the thing is to everybody to say, how would you like to see your money spent? And I don't think that the GEM committee, who's a subset of the full council, have ever really asked a town-wide question on what is their priorities. I mean, I know from back in 2015, 2016, the priorities were very much key areas in Shaftesbury, like Park Walk. I know I've spoken beforehand about removing all of the dreadful tarmac around trees, and just generally sprucing up the town. It looks tired. I'm very big on street art. I mean, that's why I quite like to see heritage lanterns and better benches. And these things don't tend to be expensive, but they can uplift people's spirits. So I would like to see better proof of what people want and how they want their council to spend.
Okay. So apparently we do public engagement prior to the budget being submitted in October, November. I mean, I take the point, and I have to say that I have been banging on about benches, Park Walk, tidying things up, making it look better for donkeys here. So I totally agree with you there. Is there any facility for councillors who are not on GEM to contribute their thoughts to where money should be spent as part of the engagement process?
Yes, absolutely. At every committee in September, including GEM, and then there is the public engagement evening, which is it's more set up for the public to provide their feedback in. The councillors obviously also can do that. The committee then goes through it all again, so every committee, any councillor can come and speak. And then you will recall from the last week's digest, I put out a question to all councillors to find out what level of engagement you wanted both full council to have and also for us to have with the public. So the options are all there for you to tell me how it is that you want to do this.
Right. And who makes that decision to tell you how we want to do this?
Each councillor can respond. So if each councillor picks up that question section in the digest, you can let me know, and then as a general rule of thumb, I'll go with the majority.
Okay. Well, in that case, I suggest that all councillors need to ensure they let Claire know how everyone's views and thoughts should be included. So, Karen, please do email Claire. I mean, I don't know. What do I know? I don't. But I would think that this should be something we should discuss as councillors in the full council meeting.
Yeah, the heritage lanterns is 10,000. I don't understand. I mean, this is what I was saying, Councillor Lou might be able to help me out. I can't understand why it never got done, because I've always liked the Park Walk lantern. And I can't see why.
But there has been a lot of it. It's all with Dorset Council. We have the lights that we have because the wattage only has to be replaced like once every 25 years. I mean, that's part of that, and they're utterly disgusting. And everyone kicked off when they were installed, and everyone wanted heritage lanterns. But you will notice that they are not directly attached to any buildings, so that they didn't have to put in for listed building consent or conservation area consent. And they are responsible for those lights, and that is the problem. It is not up to us it is not our responsibility. Whether or not we can take that responsibility over, I don't know. But I think
that was a debate. I remember. I mean, I know Councillor Lewis was involved in all of this.
Yeah.
And I mean, this was the last time I was on the town council. There were debates with the electricity board.
Yeah.
The whole thing was driven by SSEC, the lighting contractor that has the contract to replace the lights. It was a faulty contract because it just specified replacing light with light, which meant that things that were functional would be replaced by things that were functional, things that were heritage would get replaced by things that were heritage. And the SSEC took that anything previously functional. Now, some of the functional things were quite attractive. The street lights in St James's, which was the one that I was involved many years, were quite attractive, but they were only functional. And so therefore, when SSEC took over, they even started putting grey lampposts in. And that's what we're up against. Now, that was pretty well non-negotiable. And all we could do was tell them in as forcefully as we could that it was not acceptable. And in the end, we got St James's treated as a special case. And that was only after one of the local residents had mocked up a picture of Gold Hill with grey lampposts.
Yeah.
And they were shamed into doing something. Now, they have tried to do something in Bell Street. And Barton Hill has the grey lampposts. Bell Street has a mishmash of old lamps, and ideally, we would like to see all of those replaced by relatively not in your face design. But they are so rigid about what they do and what they won't do that the safest thing to do is to keep quiet until they wake up again next time, which they doubtless will, because they need to be able to show that they've achieved the appropriate measure of delivery. And Bell Street will turn up in the future when they're ready to do it. We won't get them to do it first. I'm quite convinced of that. So my view over the heritage rights is that we ought to keep something like 10K in the list. I would have left it where it was. It was voted otherwise last time. Because when they wake up again and start replacing things, we need to be able to say no, but we will put something towards making them a bit better. And to me, that might sound like defeatist, but I think it's as good as we're going to get. I've been banging my head against that one for donkey's years. And they passed the buck to each other. The head of street lighting should have resigned about 10 years ago, because when the contract went out to SSEC, he doesn't have any power. I don't know what he does all day, if he's still there. But he was supposed to be the one who would be in charge of these things, and he wouldn't say anything about it. Oh no, that's SSEC. And SSEC say, if you don't like it, you have to speak to Head of Highways. So they played us up and played us off and obstructed what we wanted to do. It was a major success to get that small improvement in St James's. I would like to do the same in Bell Street when the time comes. We all objected to certainly the lower High Street, Salisbury Street, when we put the things 20 feet higher than the roofs of adjacent houses. I don't know how anybody in their right mind could do that, but I've long since tried to reason with Irish people.
Thank you, John.
Phil. When John and I were dealing with this, John says the negotiation James got some very discreet lights that stick up underneath the houses, not show too much. And what we said was, what we don't want to do is have heritage lanterns every 100, well, actually every 50 yards down the road, because it's ludicrous to get too many lanterns. And what we did was to do a survey of Bell Street and the lanes. And what we established was that historically there were gas lanterns at each junction, and opposite the end of the road. And therefore, we did a little map showing that those positions where there were lanterns should have lanterns in between. There should be something discrete more. That's why we said that 10,000 lanterns should be sufficient to pay the extra cost of those scattering of lanterns, just to get a flavour.
Yeah.
And therefore, what amazes me is that John's touched on the point that they haven't finished the lighting replacements, which they should have done 5 years ago. Yes. And actually, what we probably ought to be doing is to try to get this forward. The problem we've got is that we haven't got a conservation officer who really got any sort of drive to try and deal with this. This was required by the fact that we saw lampposts going up. I contacted Kevin Morris at the time, who was a driven conservation officer, who came up and put a stop notice on the works, and that's why lampposts just stopped what it happened for ages. He sadly is no longer with Boston Council, so they haven't really got anybody to give a little bit of a push to this. But I mean, whether it's something that you ought to be putting on to future agendas prior to.
Yeah.
I think a sort of ball in key places of where there used to be is and that ties in with the neighbourhood plan, because the neighbourhood plan should drive the high street. I do think it's looking like, high street, the lack of seating, the low grade landscape. Just do these small little tweaks. Inexpensive, 10 grand.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
Rather than going over the top, just a small little speck will make
It wasn't a point that was brought up when we had this discussion, that if we wanted to pay for lanterns provided, we might end up with being responsible for the material maintenance of those lanterns if they were not the same as all the cheap ones that were in. There is a need to be aware of.
I would suggest that for a starter,
Sorry, Alex.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say, since we all seem to be talking a lot in agreement, we could just go for the proposal of including 5 items in our budget proposal for the next stage of the conversation, because we are going to have this conversation on a larger scale, probably at the council, in order to get the budget into a manageable shape anyway. So let's save these conversations for when you actually have to convince people that this is part of a budget that you want to include.
I'll be clear what those 5 items are. Can we just have a little? Yes, please.
So I've got the neighbourhood plan, I've got heritage lanterns. I have marked down foot and cycleways because then we can ask council to decide where they want that one to sit. The LEP funding, how can I take up with this out of the meeting to get a bit more clarification on what we're looking for? And the Guard Hill in terms of sweeping, and I will also extend that out to the High Street in view of the glyphosate policy, and also by extension then the capital programme for a new budget.
Okay. There's just one thing I want to ask actually. Another problem that's come to light is people not maintaining their hedges properly. And I've been getting quite a few complaints about how that is minimising roads, and that's particularly true on Billport and Johns Hill. And people are not maintaining their hedges, and to a certain extent parts of Leighton Lane, and it is impeding traffic and causing problems because obviously people don't want to have their cars scratched unnecessarily, and so it is now. What is the mechanism for getting this sorted? I appreciate before anyone says anything that it is technically the responsibility of the people who own the hedges. However,
Just talk to your councillor.
yeah.
So Chair, if I can suggest that part of what we do on a day-to-day basis when we take phone calls in from the public are exactly questions like that. We would normally advise them that in the first instance speak to the landowner or the household, and then speak to Dorset Council. They do have the power, if it is necessary, to write to the resident to say, please cut your hedge, and to make sure that the pathway is clear. And if that isn't followed through, they have the option to write again and say, we will come and cut your hedge and you will be responsible for the bill. So there is a mechanism in place that is within Dorset Council's power.
But not ours.
But what is really helpful is if we can encourage people to solve the problem before it gets to that enforcement stage, because once you're in enforcement, people get very unhappy, and it'd be much better to get on top of it beforehand. If I have a conversation with the relevant officers at Dorset Council and see whether or not they are experiencing a similar level of correspondence at county level, and in tangent with that, or as a tangent to that, or in tandem with that, probably better to speak to either Council B or Council Cook as Dorset councillors.
Okay, I could just to follow up with that. So at no point does the town council write to residents to ask them to say, we have received comments about your hedges, it is impeding traffic. People feel it is impeding traffic, and a very narrow road. Hang on 2 seconds, Karen. Because the thing is that, you know, I can just imagine members of the public are they don't want to engage with other people and feel like they're accusing them. It's not just their issue.
It's actually on the website.
Yeah.
So if you Google all of this, you'll actually see it. It says tree management, etc. There's all of these forms that can't have anything obstructing ground. So, because I do get asked quite a bit, and I wouldn't ask anyone to go and talk to their next neighbour and tell them off.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't.
No.
So it's all on the website. People should go in and on the website, just like pathways as well.
Yeah. Okay.
But can I just say a big but?
Yeah.
We have been waiting 10 years to started that on Tuesday. And there has been no progress beyond the promise that it would be done. And that promise was made earlier this year, and I've not heard anything back since. I would like to know why. So I can't imagine hedges coming very high on this priority.
Other than that, they're much easier to organise.
It's totally disappointing here. I thought that if you went and shot somebody's brand shop, you actually have to return it to them. But if they physically own that bit of tree or something, you can't just stop it. You actually.
Council can if it's
So we're saying that Dorset, so shooters.
That's a warning, that's not a hedge.
Why do we, well, why hasn't, so are we saying, because this one has been such a problem, so you're saying that Dorset highways could go down there and just put it all down and the.
It's a wall, not a hedge.
It's a totally different problem, Shooters Lane, and part of the problem is, you know, actually doing dry stone walling, which is what's required there, is a very expensive process. And they're trying to make and various residents overall, that's the problem. And land registry is very unclear as to exactly where the boundary is, whose portion of wall is whose. And so that's one of the reasons why it's tricky. And then also because it's much more expensive. Chopping down hedges and sending people a bill is much simpler. So actually, I think your point, but we might have a bit more success with the hedge, but nonetheless, yeah. Well, we have asked.
You don't get a solicitor or
Oh, right,
or a
yeah.
barrister or something. I mean, it's the whole thing. Have something concrete. And I know that I remember Giant Place that when clearing rubbish, you found people expanding their gardens into Giant Place, and that had to stop them. And I think that was I'm just suggesting as a budget, maybe you put down money to actually get to barristers or solicitors better to say that you know, to keep getting the emotion out of it.
Yes, yeah.
Very illegal. Because if we're saying we don't know, or a planning consultant, they're the ones that look at these diagrams and look at deeds and where the boundaries are.
It's just that we then are taking on board a cost that is technically the responsibility of the council, which we probably wouldn't get back. Not that I'm against your suggestion at all, because what we want to see is progress. But
just for the purposes of the budget, it's reasonable to say this is an area where we might want to add in additional funds into professional fees, because then this committee or another committee or council would then have that debate and discuss the pros and cons of whether to actually give the instruction to spend.
yeah,
So there's still time to explore that and the merits or otherwise of that, but I can add that into the budget.
okay, yeah. Thank you. So, do I need to propose about the budget?
At this stage, not, because you're not making a decision, but I can record it that it was agreed to make this as a recommendation. If you want to formalise it. It was a long time ago.
That you proposed that all 5 points were submitted to. Okay, I second that.
Now 6. Because
Yes, I've added something.
Yeah, but that would go on to the general budget because Joan does the legal and professional fees, but it's in there anyway.
Right. All those in favour of going home? Yes. So yes, everyone's up. Unanimous. That's. Oh, Phil. Oh, thank you. It's actually last month, but my first meeting in August. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So meeting closed at 8:26.
Marvellous.